Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bonnie Sherman, TxDOT's Bicycle and Pedestrian Program Manager. Thank you for joining us today for this virtual workshop to learn about TxDOT's 2021 Transportation Alternatives, or TA, call for projects. For many of you who have applied for TxDOT's TA funds in the past, there will be a lot of information that is familiar to you today, but we have instituted a number of changes this year that we hope will improve the process for everyone. If you haven't applied for our funds before, there's no time like the present. We have a lot of information packed into today's workshop, but don't worry if you don't catch it all, because we will post the presentations on our webpage along with a recording. So let's get started. Next slide. First, a little bit of housekeeping. For everyone participating in today's workshop, please note that the workshop is being recorded. During the workshop, TxDOT will allow time for potential project sponsors and consultants to ask questions. If a response to a specific question or a conversation needs to occur offline, we will let you know. Let's take a minute to explain the process for engaging during the virtual workshop. You have a few options. If you would like to ask a question, you can raise your digital hand, then wait to be called on. You can see your name under participants, and then if you hover over your name, the little hand pops up. You can see a little diagram on the right there. You can use the question and answer pod. It should be labeled Q&A. And if you don't see it on the right side of your screen, you can hover over the participants and chat icons there, shown on the right side of the page. We ask that you please provide your name when asking questions. Questions received here today or by email to bikeped@txdot.gov by January 28th will be included in a frequently asked question document posted on our funding webpage. That email address is on the last slide. It's in the program guide, and it will be emailed to everyone who registered. Please note that TxDOT staff will do our best to respond to everyone's questions today through the Q&A pod during the presentation. And we appreciate your cooperation and understanding as we try to allow everyone the opportunity to participate. Next slide. We have 3 in-depth presentations for you today. The first one's an overview of the program funding and application process, which will be presented by Noah Heath in my group, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Program at TxDOT's Public Transportation Division. Next, Danielle Johnson-Robinson from TxDOT's Local Government Projects section will explain federal and state requirements for projects that are awarded funds. And finally, Carl Seifert, who works with my group, will present some grant writing tips specific to our program that will be invaluable for preparing a good, detailed application. We'll plan for a 5 to 10 minute break about halfway through, and question and answer opportunities after each presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Noah to present the overview.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Noah Heath. I've been with TxDOT for about 2 years in the Public Transportation Division in the Bicycle and Pedestrian Program. When I started, it was the very beginning of the 2019 call for projects, and it was a bit of a whirlwind, but after being here for 2 years, I feel like I'm catching on, and so I hope that this presentation is informative. And like Bonnie said, as we go through the presentation, we'll have stopping points to ask questions, and then also the Q&A box is a good way to ask questions as well. The agenda for this presentation, I'll start off by giving the basic information about the funding opportunity. We'll talk about program call fundamentals. We'll talk about the two-step application process, characteristics of this call for projects, and then I'll provide information about how to access the applications and all of the supplemental information that goes along with the applications. And then if you have questions or need information after this workshop, where you can get that information or ask questions. So the funding opportunity for the TxDOT 2021 TA call for projects, there are available funds, available TA funds for fiscal years 2021 and 2022 of approximately $10.5 million. This is for non-urban areas. These are communities of 5,000 or less outside of TMAs, which I'll get into more further on in the presentation. Future TA funds are also being made available through this call for projects. There's the anticipated fiscal year 2023 and 2024 funds are approximately $13 million for small urban communities. These are areas in population of 5,001 to 200,000 outside of transportation management areas. And also approximately $13 million for non-urban areas, communities of 5,000 or less. For the future transportation alternative funding, we will be creating conditional project lists for the projects that score high and fall within the funding amount that's available. So we'll explain that a little bit more as well. So we are confident in making available future transportation, non-motorized transportation funding through this call for projects, future TA funding, because there's been a 30-year history of the federal government funding non-motorized transportation starting in 1991 with the transportation enhancements. There were several transportation bills passed for transportation enhancements. In 2005, there was Safe Routes to School funding. In 2012, it was changed to transportation alternatives. The MAP 21 transportation bill included transportation alternative funding. That was continued in 2015 with the FAST Act. And we anticipate the next federal transportation bill will also include transportation alternative funding. We're not sure exactly which year that bill will be passed, but we do anticipate additional funding to be available, and we're confident in making that available through this call for projects. So a little more detail on the available non-urban funding for fiscal years 2021 and 2022. Like I said before, the project must be located outside of the smooth boundary of the census urbanized area, which are areas greater than 200,000 in population, known as the transportation management areas. And we'll get into more detail. I have several slides that show you exactly what we're talking about, and then also where you can find information. We have an interactive map that you'll be able to access to determine if your community falls within a TMA or outside of a TMA. The eligible population areas for non-urban funding are communities of 5,000 people or less. The funding that's available is approximately $10.5 million. There is a local match requirement of 20%. However, there are communities, if they meet certain size and economic criteria, that are eligible for transportation development credits This is new to this call for projects for us, for TxDOT. But the transportation development credits are federal funding used for match requirements. And I'll discuss that in more detail as we move through the presentation. The eligible reimbursable activities, project construction, preliminary engineering, including design and environmental documentation, and then also the TxDOT administrative fee. A very important note with the transportation alternatives projects is that they must be let within 3 years of TxDOT receiving the federal allocation, or we risk losing the funding. So it's important that we, as soon as projects are awarded funds, that they begin the project initiation phase and project development phase as quickly as we can move those projects along, because there's a pretty tight window to get that project to let for construction within that 3-year time frame. So the future funding for non-urban and small urban communities for fiscal years 2023 and 2024, those projects also must be located outside of the smooth boundary of the transportation management area. The eligible population areas, like I said before, non-urban communities, 5,000 people or less, small urban communities, 5,001 to 200,000. There's approximately 13 million for each population area, non-urban and small urban. This is for fiscal years 2023 and 2024. The local match requirement is also 20%. However, communities that meet certain size and economic criteria may be eligible for TDCs. The size criteria of a community needs to be 50,000 in population or less, and then we'll go into the economic criteria in more detail. Communities that are 50,000 and one or larger, those communities may be eligible for the Economic Disadvantaged Counties program. And this is a state program that reduces the local match requirements. The state participates and funds some of that local match requirement depending on the percent reduction for that county. And I'll also go into that in more detail. Eligible reimbursable activities, project construction for all projects, preliminary engineering, including design and environmental documentation for communities of 50,000 or less in population. And then the TxDOT administrative fee. Also, for these projects, they must be let within 3 years or risk losing funding. Bill is passed, TxDOT will recommend projects for funding by the Texas Transportation Commission based on the initial project ranking.
Yes. Sorry. You lost audio for about 30 seconds on the last slide.
Okay.
If it's not too much, no, it's not too much trouble. I just don't want anyone to miss anything. So if you could just, I don't know where a good spot is to restart. Maybe start at the beginning of the slide.
All right. Apologize for that. We'll just do this slide again. And because we want to make sure you get all the content. So projects, So this is the future non-urban and small urban TA funds for fiscal year 2023 and 2024. Projects must be located outside of the transportation management area. Eligible population areas. For non-urban, those are communities of 5,000 people or less. Small urban communities, 5,001 to 200,000. Future funding that's anticipated is approximately 13 million for non-urban, 13 million for small urban. The local match requirement, there's a 20% local match requirement. However, communities that meet certain size and economic criteria may be eligible for TDCs, Transportation Development Credits. And these are federal funds that can be used for match requirements. The certain size, that refers to communities of 50,000 or less. But communities of 50,001 to 200,000, they may be eligible for the Economic Disadvantaged Counties Program, which is a state participation program. The state reduces the local match requirement for the local government or the project sponsor. And depending on where that county falls within the program, that would determine the percentage of reduction. And we'll go into that in more detail. The eligible activities, project construction, preliminary engineering for communities of 50,000 or less in population, and TxDOT's admin fee. So the conditional project list, this is a prioritized, fiscally constrained list of the highest scoring projects that will be recommended to commission for TA funding once funding becomes available. At the end of this call, TxDOT will develop these prioritized lists for approximately 13 million in future funding for small urban TA projects and approximately 13 million for non-urban. When the next federal transportation bill is passed, TxDOT will recommend these projects for funding by the Texas Transportation Commission based on the initial project ranking, which will result from this call for projects, project readiness, and the available amount of funding. We also included these conditional project lists for the 2019 call for projects. If you're a project sponsor that has a project identified on that 2019 conditional project list, you do not need to resubmit that same project under this TxDOT 2021 TA call for projects. Those 2019 projects will be recommended to commission as funding becomes available. So you do not need to resubmit those projects. However, if you have a different project you would like to submit for the 2021 call for projects, you're welcome to submit that project. This slide summarizes the last three slides in a table format. It's kind of a quick reference, but it shows that non-urban funding group is 5,000 or less in population. There's a 20% match requirement. However, there may be reduction in that match if that community is eligible for TDCs. The eligible activities are preliminary engineering and construction. And there's both available funding of 10.5 million and future funding of 13 million available through this call for non-urban TA. For small urban, there's a little more breakdown in population. For small urban, 5,001 to 200,000, there's approximately 13 million in future funding available. For the communities 5,001 to 50,000, preliminary engineering and construction are eligible activities. And those communities are also eligible for transportation development credits. For communities of 50,001 to 200,000, those communities are eligible for the Economic Disadvantaged Counties Program, and eligible activities are only construction or construction related items. So with that, I don't know if this is a good point to stop for questions. Have we had quite a few rolling in, or should I just continue and we save the questions for the end or further on in the presentation?
Go ahead and continue.
Okay.
We do not have any questions.
Okay. So program call fundamentals. The TxDOT Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Program, which is for population areas of 200,000 or less, operates under rules adopted by the Texas Transportation Commission. And those rules are outlined in the Transportation Administrative Code, which the chapters are listed on this slide. Those rules are created and based on the federal TA set-aside program, the guidance that FHWA provides for this program. Basically, our rules fall within those guidelines. And those are in the United States Code, which is listed at the top. And then we have a link to their website where they provide guidance. NPOs that have or that are designated as a transportation management area also receive transportation alternative funding, and they create their own rules based on FHWA guidance and conduct independent competitive call for projects. So you may be a project sponsor that's located in an NPO that is a designated TMA, and you will see that they also have transportation alternative funding and have call for projects, and their rules may be slightly different from TxDOT's. So who's eligible for TxDOT's call for projects, for TA funding? Local governments, regional transportation authorities, transit agencies, natural resource or public land agencies, school districts, local education agencies or schools, tribal governments, nonprofits responsible for administration of local transportation safety programs, and then other governmental entities responsible for oversight of transportation or recreational trails other than NPOs or state agencies. The eligible activities, bicycle infrastructure improvements, shared use paths, sidewalks, infrastructure related to projects to improve safety for non-motorized transportation. These are some visuals to go along with those eligible activities, some examples. Shared use paths, which can be used by bicyclists and pedestrians. Bicycle infrastructure improvements like bike lanes. This is a picture of a bike lane, but there's also separated bike lanes and buffered bike lanes. And other bicycle infrastructure improvements. Non-motorized safety improvements, so crosswalks, signalization for non-motorized transportation, and then sidewalk improvements. The focus areas for this call for projects. Project sponsors are strongly encouraged to submit projects that improve safety, access, and mobility for people of all ages and abilities, especially on system improvements within TxDOT right-of-way in support of TxDOT's ADA pedestrian initiatives. Construction of segments identified as part of the Texas Bicycle Tourism Trails Network, or implementation of a locally preferred alternative route. The Texas Bicycle Transportation or Tourism Trails Network You can find that on the state planning map or the TxDOT state planning map. It's included as a layer on that map. And then there's also information about the tourism trails on the biped webpage at TxDOT. So those are two resources if you want to learn more about the Texas bicycle tourism trails. Improve bicycling, wheelchair, and walking access to or between existing bicycle and pedestrian facilities, public transportation, or mobility hubs that integrate multiple modes of transportation. Enhance bicycle and pedestrian access and safety to school-related destinations, enabling and encouraging children, including those with disabilities, to walk and bicycle to school activities. There's no longer federal funding directly for Safe Routes to School. However, Safe Routes to School type projects fall under the Transportation Alternative program as a project type that is funded by that program. Eligible phases of work. So these are federal reimbursable phases, and they include construction and construction-related activities for all projects, for this call for projects, preliminary engineering and environmental documentation for projects in population areas of 50,000 or less, TxDOT's direct state cost for all projects. The detailed application must include estimated costs for all activities for which the project sponsor is seeking reimbursement. That estimated cost in the preliminary application will be what the award is based on. So it's important to get that cost estimate as close to the, as accurate as possible so that enough funding is awarded to the project. Reimbursable activities are limited to actual documented costs incurred after project award, advanced funding agreement with TxDOT, federal project authority and agreement, and the TxDOT authorization to proceed. So any activity that occurs before all of those bullet points are met will not be reimbursable. Federal and state requirements, or federal and state requirements, must be met for all activities with federal participation. The other requirements, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure must be principally for transportation rather than purely recreational. It must contribute to a safe, contiguous, accessible, integrated walking and or bicycling network, and it must benefit the general public. So a few examples, if you were to submit a project that was located entirely within a school campus or entirely within a park, and it was kind of like a circulation within that campus or park, then that would be ineligible, an ineligible proposal. However, if a project was along a greenbelt that is part of a long distance bicycle and pedestrian network, some examples include the Circle Trail in Wichita Falls, the Katy Trail in Denison, and the Northeast Trail in our Northeast Texas Trail. These would be eligible projects. If it's a path, a sidewalk that goes through a park but connects to the larger transportation network, then that would be eligible. But anything that's purely for recreational or contained within a campus or a park, that would not be eligible. So like I said before, the TA funds must be, or TxDOT's TA funds must be administered outside of the census urbanized areas of 200,000 or greater, known as transportation management areas. There's two funding groups, the non-urban, 5,000 in population or less, and then small urban, 5,001 to 200,000. So I've been talking about transportation management areas. Some of you may wonder what those are, or if your community's inside or out. So they're based on the 2010 U.S. Census urbanized area boundary. These are boundaries with a population of 200,000 or greater. And then after the 2010 census, or the Census Bureau releases those boundaries, the NPO and the State Department of Transportation, TxDOT, refine those urbanized area boundaries based on logical characteristics. This may be city boundaries or other characteristics. And then with concurrent from FHWA, those boundaries are smoothed out. So you can see the difference between this jagged boundary and then the smooth TMA boundary. That makes a little more sense when you get down to the local level. So we've created a tool, and I think I'll pull that up right now, that you should be able to access. Let's see. So this tool is an interactive map that we created so that project sponsors could determine if they're within a transportation management area, therefore not eligible for TxDOT's transportation alternative funding. But also earlier I mentioned transportation development credits. And so this website will also tell you if you're eligible for those credits or not. So this is just the interface that'll pull up right when you pull up the website. And then you can open Legend right here so that you are oriented to what each of the what the symbology needs. You can enter in your community. And it'll zoom to your community. Georgetown is just north of Austin. If you click on it, you can see that there's a gray overlay. That means that projects within Georgetown would not be eligible for TxDOT's TA funding. It's in the capital area MPO. However, you can see that gray TMA boundary, and then a community that falls outside, Taylor, would be eligible for TA funding. And then if you click on it, you can see that it has this green overlay. Taylor would also be eligible for the transportation development credits. So we're hoping that this tool helps project sponsors determine if they're inside of a transportation management area. And if they are, they're not eligible for TxDOT's TA funds, but they are eligible for TA funds, transportation alternative funds through their MPO. And then also, if the community is interested in transportation development credits for that local match, this tool will let them know if they're eligible for those. And see, like Lexington doesn't have the green overlay, so they are eligible for TxDOT's TA program. However, they wouldn't be eligible for the TDCs for the local match. They would have to have local funding for that 20% local match. So this is a zoomed out picture of the TMAs throughout Texas and the NPO boundaries. You can see that the NPO boundaries are generally larger than the TMA boundary, where it looks like there always are. Let's see. So just to explain that the relationship between TMAs and NPOs and TxDOT's program, This is a simplified diagram. If you have a project, you're a project sponsor, you have a project in area A, you are inside of a transportation management area, which is also inside an MPO, you are not eligible for TxDOT's TA funding. If you're a project or if you're a project sponsor with a project in area B, outside of the transportation management area, but inside of the MPO boundary, you're eligible to submit that project for TA funding through TxDOT call for projects or call for projects administered by the MPO. If you're in area C, you're outside of MPO boundaries and TMA boundaries, so you're only eligible for TxDOT TA funding, call for projects. If you're a project sponsor in area B with a project in area B, that you can submit a project to TxDOT or the MPO. However, you cannot submit that same project to a TxDOT and MPO call for projects that are occurring concurrently. So let's say you currently have a project that is being reviewed for a call for projects through your MPO, but they have not made a determination on which projects will be awarded. You cannot submit that same project to TxDOT's call for projects. However, if you submitted a project to an MPO and that MPO determined that the project would not be awarded funding and you were not successful in getting funding through that MPO call for projects, you can submit that project to TxDOT's call for projects. All right, we're kind of at another stopping point. If there's any major questions we should address.
We're kind of answering them as they come in, Noah. I would ask any of the attendees if they want to ask questions verbally. Go ahead and raise your hand. Otherwise, if you enter your questions in the Q&A box, we'll get to them as soon as we can. Thanks.
All right, well, continue on and we can stop if we get some questions. So the two-step application process, there are some differences with this call for projects than previous call for projects administered by TxDOT for transportation alternative funding. The first one being that for this call for projects, we are limiting project sponsors to 3 applications per sponsoring entity. We want the project sponsors to submit their highest priority projects for the federal funding, and so we hoping by limiting it to 3, we really get their top needed projects, and then this also allows more entities to compete for that funding. There's not one entity submitting relatively large amount of applications. In-kind contributions are no longer allowed as a local match option. However, projects in population areas of 50,000 or less can request reimbursement of preliminary engineering activities, including costs for design and environmental documentation. Also, projects in a population area of 50,000 or less may be eligible for use of transportation development credits that allow for 100% federal TA funds to be applied to the program in lieu of local match. communities that are 50,001 or greater can, the Economic Disadvantaged Counties program remains available for those communities. And I will talk more about both of these local match options further on in the presentation. For the TDCs, your community has to be 50,000 or less. There's economic criteria that the community must meet. And if you meet both of those, then transportation development credits are an option for your project. And then the program evaluation criteria has changed since the last call for projects. They were updated to align with TxDOT's mission of connecting you with Texas. Additionally, we held a brainstorming workshop where we reviewed criteria from other DOTs and NPOs, and then also worked with workshop attendees to tweak the evaluation criteria. The two-step application process. This is similar to our last call for projects, where there is a preliminary application that's mainly or it's high-level information about the project and the project sponsor. But it also includes a link to a map of the project and an estimated budget as an attachment. This allows TxDOT to review projects for eligibility, and it also allows TxDOT district meetings to occur with eligible project sponsors. And this is an opportunity for project sponsors to meet with TxDOT district staff and go over any major issues that district staff may see with the project, and for the project sponsor to ask questions about their project before submitting a detailed application, which is far more extensive as far as the amount of information that the project sponsor needs to include in that detailed application. The detailed application is step 2, and step 2 is where the project will be evaluated and scored. Based on the detailed application, the TxDOT will score the projects, and this is where projects will be ranked, and it'll be determined which projects are either awarded funding or included on the conditional project list, or which projects fall outside of that funding, those two lists for funding, and need to resubmit the project in a future call for projects. The overall timeline. So the call for projects opened on the 15th. Preliminary applications are available on the BikePed funding website. Those preliminary applications are due March 1st. TxDOT will review those applications for eligibility. Project sponsors will need to meet with district staff to review the project. By April 12th, TxDOT notifies project sponsors of their eligibility to move on to step 2. Project sponsors will have a little over 2 months to fill out and complete the detailed application. The deadline for detailed application is June 14th. Over the summer, TxDOT will review those projects and score them. And then for available funding, we're targeting the October 2021 commission award, or recommending for commission action, and also October 2021 for to produce and post the conditional project list for the future funding. Like I said, the preliminary application, it'll be in a PDF format. It's a fillable PDF, and it includes high-level project details, project sponsor information, contact information, population size and location, project information such as the name, location, general description, project type, funding opportunity, the project sponsor is pursuing, high-level cost estimates, and information on project complexity. Like I said, those are the preliminary project application is available on TxDOT's website, MikePed website. Once those are submitted, staff to schedule a district review meeting. These will be virtual meetings. Last go around, those meetings were, virtual, but also both in person. But for this call for projects, for obvious reasons, where these projects will be conducted or these meetings will be conducted virtually. Project sponsors are expected to meet with TxDOT district staff to review proposed projects, to discuss TA program details with the project sponsor, understand proposed project concept and complexity, discuss the cost estimates, and identify project readiness. The district meeting timeframe, those meetings would need to occur before April 9th or by April 9th. And project sponsors should contact the district TA coordinator to set up the district meeting if they've not been contacted by March 15th. And we have a list of the district coordinators on our website, on the funding website. So you should be able to identify your district contact. After the March 1st deadline for preliminary application, TxDOT PTN will review all the submitted applications to determine eligibility. We'll make sure that the project sponsor is eligible, the location of the project is eligible, and then the project activities. And then all project sponsors will be notified of their funding program eligibility by April 12th. So this will be notification that your project is eligible to move on to step 2. A project that does not successfully complete step 1 will not be evaluated in step 2. So if you do not fill out a preliminary application in step 1, or if during step 1 it's determined that the project is ineligible, then that project will not be evaluated during step 2 of the process. The detailed application, all projects that move to step 2 will be eligible to complete the detailed application. This is an Excel based form which collects more comprehensive information about the proposed project. The topics include questions addressing evaluation criteria. So this is detailed questions about the project, and these questions are what the project will be scored on. Typical sections, project layout, and maps will be included as attachments. A detailed construction budget. Again, the construction budget is what the award will be based on, so it's important to be as accurate as we can on that construction budget. The project will need to demonstrate project readiness. Like I said before, there's a 3-year funding window, so it's important that projects are ready to move forward once the project is awarded funding. And then there are attachments that are required, such as a resolution indicating local support and commitment to implement the project if the project is awarded funding. The time frame, the detailed application for all eligible project sponsors is due June 14th. Project evaluation, once we receive the detailed application, each application will be scored based on the evaluation criteria. TxDOT district staff, division subject matter experts will evaluate overall feasibility and constructability. The target milestones, this evaluation will occur over the summer of 2021, and then we're targeting October to recommend projects for commission award for the available funding, but then also to post the conditional project list in October of 2021. These are the evaluation criteria. They're listed in the program guide, so I won't read them verbatim. This slide is pretty dense with text. We'll also be making all of the presentations available online, so you'll have a chance to review these slides again. But the overall evaluation categories are safety, project sponsor, project readiness, geographic equity, demand, connectivity and accessibility, and community support. So we want projects that are safe, that demonstrate a need for safety improvements, and submit appropriate safety countermeasures. We want projects that demonstrate project readiness and the ability to advance the project to construction immediately if selected for funding. Projects that improve mode choice in underserved communities. We'll be evaluating demand for small urban only. So these are small urban communities. We'll be looking at access to higher density residential and employment centers. We want connected and accessible projects that improve non-motorized routes and access to destinations of interest. Community projects that demonstrate community support, public outreach that demonstrates positive community support, established community partnerships, and that demonstrate a commitment to provide the local match and maintenance of the facility once completed. So those are just a few of the criteria. Like I said, I'm not going to read through all of these, but they're all in the program guide. So the local match options I've discussed a bit throughout the presentation. The federal TA program requires a 20% local match for construction. TxDOT offers flexibility in the local match for construction, cash, transportation development credits, the economic disadvantaged counties program, and then local project sponsors are always, you can always provide an overmatch of more than 20% if you wish to do that. The 20% local match for TxDOT's administration fee can be provided by project sponsors utilizing the local match options outlined above. So the transportation development credits, to be eligible for transportation development credits, the project must be located in a population area of 50,000 or less outside of a designated transportation management area. The project must also be located in an economic disadvantaged county certified by commission at the time of TxDOT's 2021 call for projects. Or if it's outside of a EDCP county, the project is located in a city or census designated place or rural area that meets all of the following three criteria. Below state average per capita taxable property value, below state average per capita income, and above state average unemployment. Projects that are in these eligible areas will be eligible for TDCs, which will allow for 100% federal TA funds to be applied to the project in lieu of local match. Like I said and demonstrated earlier, there is the interactive map, so you'll be able to determine if your community is eligible for TDC funds. We also provided a list of communities as an appendix to the program guide. The Economic Disadvantaged Counties Program. This will be available to communities of 50,000 or greater than 50,000. Like I said before, these are designated by commission, and it's based on the counties that are in the program as of 2021 when the call opened. The project has to be projects located along or immediately adjacent to on or off system roadways that are in an economic disadvantaged county are eligible. The 2021 EDCP reduction percentage will be used for projects selected under this funding. So if you're in a county and the percentage changes next year, we use the 2021 percentage because that was what the percentage was when the call opened. However, if the county completely falls out of the EDCP eligibility, out of the program before the AFA is signed, then the county won't be able to take advantage of that adjustment, that local match adjustment, or the project sponsor won't be able to take advantage of that local match adjustment. And then a separate EDCP application must be completed after the project is selected and before the advanced funding agreement is signed. For more information, we held a workshop the 21st. We're currently doing our workshop for the 25th, and we'll have another one on Wednesday morning, the 27th. If you would like to attend or know someone who might be interested. Also, our TxDOT biped webpage. If you go to TxDOT's webpage, scroll down to the bottom, there's this icon of a person on a bicycle. Click on that, and it will take you to the biped webpage. If you click on funding opportunities, you will go to another page that talks about the biped funding opportunities, and there's a link on that page that you click on, and it'll take you to the funding page with all of the application and supplemental information that goes along with this call for projects. Like I said, the program guide, preliminary application instructions, the interactive map that I demonstrated earlier are all currently available on the TxDOT biped funding page. Available later, soon after these workshops are complete, we'll make the workshop presentations available, frequently asked questions document. And then once we move closer to the beginning of the detailed application phase, step 2, the detailed application and detailed application instructions will be made available. Like I said, on the biped funding page, there is a link to district's TA and Safe Routes to School coordinators. If you have project-specific issues, please contact the district contact. If you have questions, please email the funding or application questions to biped@txdot.gov by January 28th. We'll include answers to those questions in the frequently asked questions document. And with that, we can open it up to questions.
Well, we actually just had another one asked. So rather than us typing it, Noah, if we are proposing a project within the TxDOT right-of-way, should we have a letter of support from the district office?
Yes, and you'll have opportunity to discuss that with district staff during the high-level preliminary application phase, and when you meet with the district staff, you can discuss that and how to secure that that concurrence with the project from TxDOT.
We will also have an example in a later presentation of approval letter or concurrence letter from TxDOT district that we can share. And there was one other question. Norma Garza had asked about a bullet point on slide 37. I think Bonnie answered it, but Norma, if you have additional questions, let us know. Again, everyone's encouraged to raise your hand if you have any questions. Thanks. And it is currently 2:04 by my watch, so I think we're due for a break. Bonnie and Noah, what do you guys think about 2:15?
Be fine with me?
Sounds good.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. We will be starting promptly at 2:15 with a presentation from the Local Governments Project Office. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Danielle Johnson Robinson, and I am a local government coordinator in the Local Government Projects Office. And I'm joined here today because of the TA program itself. What I want to really point out is right now, this early stage of the process, the most important thing that we want the local governments to focus on is the application. My group is here because we want y'all to be aware of once your project is accepted or awarded or selected, in this case, then everything I'm going to talk about will be required of the local government. So I'm going to go over the program's overview. Now, the definition of a local government project is when one phase of the project development or program is managed by the local government, which is receiving reimbursement funds from FHWA or state. So one phase of a project could be environmental design, right-of-way, utility relocation, or construction. Just one has to be managed by the local government. Another definition is when the locals are funding a project 100%, but it's located on the state highway system. That falls under this program requirement. So projects, once your project is selected by PTN, then the local government and TxDOT will have to sign a contract, which is an advanced funding agreement. The advanced funding agreement will list out the responsibilities, and it'll also state the LG's responsibilities for paying TxDOT's costs to oversee the project. There will be an attachment C in the advanced funding agreement that will break down the cost, pre-construction, construction, post-construction, but it'll list what the LG is responsible for. And in this presentation, I talked about LG's local governments, but I believe Noah, in his presentation, y'all will call project sponsors. So same thing, project sponsors / local government. Y'all still represent local government. So in the AFA, there will be clauses that will do the financial commitment. They'll have termination clauses in there. It'll have the federal provisions and the state provisions in there. It'll talk about who's responsible for right-of-way, utilities, environmental. It'll break it all down for you. Before an AFA can be signed, TxDOT will have to administrate a risk assessment per federal code. A risk assessment is when TxDOT will sit down at the district level and evaluate the subrecipient, which is the local government, of risk of noncompliance with the federal codes and regulations in terms of previous projects they might have had with TxDOT. If the locals haven't had a project with TxDOT, then it's more up to the district managers coming together and deciding how they're going to monitor that local government when it comes to risk that the state, who are in place of the feds, will hold accountable. But with the risk assessment, the locals will also have to fill out an oversight special approval per the TAC 1552. The oversight level special approval has a Part A and a Part B. Part A will be filled out by the local government themselves that ask for prior experience, the scope of the project, what the locals think that they can maintain and manage, which phase of a project that the locals think they can maintain and manage. Then Part B will be filled out by the district, and they will mainly evaluate the locals again, just like the risk assessment. But before the ASA can be signed with the state, a risk assessment has to be done on the locals, and the oversight level special approval has to be intact with the ASA for the ASA to be signed. On TxDOT.gov, on the local government section website, we have a guidance document there that pretty much lines out and gives the locals instructions on how to participate in their responsibilities when dealing with an ASA. And the link is on this presentation, which the presentation will be up on PTN's website. Okay. So once the ASA is signed, the ASA will state who's responsible for cost overruns on attachment C. At the very top of the ASA, you'll state it. Also to remember, this program is a reimbursement program. It's not a grant program where you fill out the application, you have your project scope, and you're awarded $500,000, and TxDOT's just going to write you a $500 check and not care about documentation or invoices. No. You have to incur the cost first. So once your project goes into construction, you have to incur the cost, submit your documentation to TxDOT to approve, and then TxDOT will reimburse you. So it's good for the local governments to have 3 to 6 months of ready money, use money in the bank to pay their contractors, so you still can move on within the project before TxDOT reimburse you. In this program, there's several laws and regulations that have to be followed. There's the Texas Administration Code, there's the Texas Local Government Code, Texas Transportation Code, the U.S. Code, and then the Code of Federal Regulations. So with all these different codes and regulations that have to be followed, the most important thing to remember is you will follow the most restrictive. For example, the Texas Government Code, Texas Local Government Code states for advertisement, it's 2 consecutive weeks of advertisement. And the federal code states there's 21 consecutive days of advertisement before going into opening bids. So with that being said, you would follow the most restrictive, which is the 21 days of advertisement before bids are opened. So the most important thing to remember when dealing with federal money is to be reimbursed with federal money, you have to follow the federal laws and the state laws. TxDOT's not going to reimburse you if you're not following the laws. Also, federal funds cannot be paid on accounts that have prior invoices before you have your authorization. So if you know you have a project that was accepted and you plan on paying your consultants with federal funds for the design phase, before your contract your ASA is signed, you cannot go ahead and start paying a consultant for work without having your authorization. So your contract, your ASA has to be signed, and you should have your FTAA back from the district and your state letter of authority before you start charging time to that project. That's something that you need to remember, especially when dealing with federal funds, because you cannot charge federal funds before prior authorization. Another thing under the federal program is that TxDOT is not relieved of its responsibilities under the federal law. So the feds hold TxDOT responsible for what the locals do. So that's why TxDOT has oversight, and that's why TxDOT, as we put it, are all up in your business, because the feds are going to hold us ultimately responsible for what y'all do. So prior to beginning work, once your ASA is signed and you have your state letter of authority and your FTAA, TxDOT and the LG will name responsible persons in charge. A responsible person in charge for TxDOT must be a full-time employee and a registered professional engineer. On the LG side, the responsible person in charge must be a full-time employee. And the responsible person in charge duties consist of administrating project activities, the cost, the time, the scope, maintain familiarities to day-to-day operations, participate in important decisions about change orders, visit and review projects regularly, and review the financial processes, transactions, and documentation, and also is the direct project staff over all stages of the project. Along with the responsible person in charge, the TxDOT and the LG have to designate a project manager. A project manager will be responsible for the day-to-day operations. They'll be the primary point of communication between TxDOT and the LG. And the project manager can be the same person as the responsible person in charge, or it can be a consultant when dealing with LG. Along with your responsible person in charge and a project manager, the LG also has to have a qualified person actively involved in the project. A qualified person must have completed LGP 101 training, and it could be the same person as the responsible person in charge or the project manager. It can be an employee of the local government, or it can be a consultant. So the LGP training is a 12-hour class with an exam, so a day and a half class. The certification is provided by UTA Arlington, and my office offers this class 2 to 3 times a month for this physical year. Since COVID, we have transitioned this class to be virtual. So you have a chance until the end of August to take the class virtual. Once September rolls around, I don't know how many classes will do virtual, but as of right now, to the end of August, we are virtual. In the class, we'll go over the laws and regulations that FHWA and the state has. We'll go over ASAs, how to read them, what's covered in them. Then we'll go over project development process and project initiation all the way to project closeout, and then a quick review and the test. And once you pass the test, you'll be certified for at least 3 years in LGP 101. When dealing with state and federal funds, the LG has an opportunity to submit alternative process, procedures, standards, and specifications for TxDOT review when it comes to the design phase. If the project is on the state highway system, the LG must use TxDOT processes, procedures, standards, and specifications. So it's up to the LG. They can use it if the project is off system, if they want, or they can use their own, and TxDOT will just have to pre-approve them. If the project is on system, then you don't have a choice. You have to use TxDOT processes, procedures, standards, and specifications. And here's a diagram of the phases of a project development process, from project initiation all the way to project closeout. You see that environmental and right-of-way is the whole life of a project. And that's something to remember, and I'll hit that a little later on in the slides. So project initiation. At this stage or phase in a project, your ASA is signed. You should have your FPAA from TxDOT, and you should have your state letter of authority stating that you can proceed with the design phase. Your FPAA states that the funds are there. So you should conduct a kickoff meeting with TxDOT and make sure that at this point you should know who your project manager is. Make sure you have asked the project manager to visit the site with you. In the kickoff meeting, you'll designate, the responsible person in charge, who's the PM, who's the qualified person for the LG side. You'll go over the scope of the project, pretty much break down the ASA. You'll go page by page of the ASA. And what's important here is that if you're going to hire a consultant for design phase and you want to get reimbursed, it's good at this point to already have your procurement procedures of how you're going to meet the federal regulations in selecting your consultant. And this is only important if you plan on getting reimbursed for the design phase of your project. If you're not going to get reimbursed for the design phase of your project with federal funds, then you can go ahead and procure how you want to. TxDOT will not have to approve your procurement. So prior to you advertising for procurement, you have to seek TxDOT's approval and obtain the FPAA. And during your kickoff meeting is the perfect time for you to seek that approval, because you'll have your responsible person in charge in the room. You'll have your PM in the room that can go ahead and approve your procedures before you advertise. That's the most important thing. You need to have it approved by your TxDOT PM before you advertise. And once you advertise and you decide how you're going to procure your consultant, it's going to be up to the local government to negotiate the contract with the consultant. And then, of course, you'll manage and monitor the consultant. Okay. Environmental phase, it'll be stated in the ASA. Most likely the LG will be responsible for it. There's different types of environmental actions. You have the EIS, you have the EA, and you have the SE. The LG will be responsible for preparing all documentation, securing all necessary approvals, and then submitting a NEPA documents to TxDOT for approval. The primary point of contact is through the district. And a lot of times, I know I'm from a bigger district in Texas, so we have an environmental section in Houston. But I know a lot of the bigger districts will assign an environmental PM for you or for that project. Preliminary engineering and design phase will be the LG's responsibility. A schematic should be submitted concurrently with environmental phase, and it should be early on in the project before your 30% design or 30% plans are submitted. Also, the scheduled design concept conference should be before 30% plans. Both of those things should be obtained early in the design phase. In your DCC, it's mainly to get your approval of the design criteria. That's important to make sure that you're following the design criteria moving forward. The LG should submit preliminary layouts for TxDOT review and approval, and then prepare the final designs in accordance with established, agreed upon design criteria. So At this point, if you adopted TxDOT standard specifications, special specifications, or the special provisions, or if you submitted your own an alternative, and it will be pre-approved by TxDOT at this point. And then all traffic control devices on all roadways must comply with the Texas Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. Right-of-way. Right-of-way must be purchased per the Uniform Act, and the ASA will state if the LG is responsible. Most likely the LG will be responsible. What to remember about the right-of-way is right-of-way cannot be purchased until the environmental is cleared for the project. That's important. Relocations of all utilities in conformance with TxDOT's right-of-way division and utility manual. And then if for some unknown reason a project is let and the right-of-way has not been purchased or utilities have not been relocated, it's not preferred by the district. And the reason is if a project is let and say it limits the contractor to where they can work, and then all of a sudden the contractor submits a schedule and where the utilities were not relocated is where they're going to start working, that's going to be on the LG to have to pay the contractor. And so we kind of not prefer for projects to be let unless they are complete. However, if it is in the bid document, the LG needs to state exactly when the utilities will be relocated or when the right-of-way will be purchased. It would have to be in the bid document. So, PS&E phase. The LG will be responsible to make sure that all federal and state required items is in the bid document. For example, Buy America. What makes a bid non-responsive? Safety, retainage, Form FHWA 1273. There are several things that will have to be a part of your bid document before TxDOT will approve your PS&E package. Along with your PS&E phase, if your plans have over $50,000 of pedestrian items, then the LG will have to submit their plans to RASA for them to review the accessibility. Once your plans are approved with TxDOT, the LG will be required to do a quality assurance plan. TxDOT has a quality assurance plan. It's there for the LG to adopt. If the LG doesn't want to adopt, they have to submit their own, and they can submit their own during the advertisement period, and TxDOT will have to approve it. It takes about 21 to 30 days for TxDOT to approve the quality assurance plan. The most important thing to remember when it comes to your PS&E package, once you know your letting date, your PS&E package and your documents have to be submitted to TxDOT 20 weeks prior to your scheduled letting date. So if you're scheduled to let a project June 2021, your plan should have been submitted to TxDOT January 2021. So that's very important to remember. It's 20 weeks for TxDOT to review your plans from your letting date. Construction letting, TxDOT will look at your procurement process when they look at your PS&E package and bid documents. That's when TxDOT will approve your letting and bidding. You can't advertise until you receive a state letter of authority from TxDOT, and that would be at the district level. The advertisement period is a minimum of 21 days. Bids have to be open in public and tabulated and compared to the engineering estimate. So when you do your bid analysis and submit it to TxDOT, it should be all the contractors that bid along with the engineering estimate. And then LG cannot execute a construction contract prior to TxDOT's written concurrence. And it normally takes about 21 days for the concurrence to come from the construction division. Okay, upon execution of a construction contract, LG's cost of construction administration and inspection may be eligible costs in addition to the contract cost. So you would have your FPAA. Your FPAA will state how much money is for the construction cost. And if there's money left over, then that's where the LG might be eligible to have funds for construction administration and inspection, but your AFA will show that. It's the LG's responsibility also to provide a written notice to proceed for the contractor. The LG needs to lead a pre-con meeting before the contractor goes out there to start work, and TxDOT should be in attendance for that pre-con meeting. All subcontractors should be approved by the LG, and all subcontractors' agreements should have Form FHWA 1273 included. Make sure the contractor submits a schedule at the beginning of a project. So during your pre-construction meeting, submit a schedule, and then make sure they update their schedule as the project goes along with the submittals and invoices, and then make timely payments to the contractor for work completed. During the construction phase, it's the LG's responsibility to provide the construction administration and the daily project inspections per the laws and regulations requirements. They must provide a reimbursement request with the appropriate documentation to TxDOT monthly. And then keep and create project records that are clear and adequate, show how you're coming up with the quantities, like the measurement. Make sure that's part of your project records, and then keep your project records per the AFA. The AFA will state exactly how long the LG needs to keep their project records. And then for project closeout, make sure before the LG releases the contractor that you ask the TxDOT PM to come out there and walk the project with you to make sure TxDOT's going to accept the project. You don't want to release the contractor without TxDOT telling you, hey, yes, we'll accept the project. It's the LG's responsibility to make sure all the right-of-way acquisitions and the utility relocations are complete, and then the LG will submit the final reimbursement to the TxDOT project manager with backup documentation for the project final review and audit. So before the LG submits that final reimbursement, make sure that TxDOT PM has came out to the project and agree with you that the project will be accepted. And then remember, TxDOT, FHWA, State Auditor's Office, and others still have the right to audit that project even after the project has been completed. For LG managed projects, it's TxDOT's responsibility to maintain oversight responsibility during all project development phases to ensure projects are managed, developed, and constructed in accordance with the approved policy, procedures, plans, and specifications. And then we'll also look at the request and the documentation, so the project records, to make sure we pay for all the eligible costs. And then safety is everybody's responsibility to ensure that the roads are safe for the workers, for the traveling public, for the LG, and the state employees. So I know I've gone over a lot of information. There's several different resources out there for you all. In our TxDOT research library, we have project scoping guidebook for metropolitan planning organization transportation projects and governments. And this helps the LG develop a good project scope, cost estimate, and schedule. And there's a link. These slides will be available on PTN's website. Another good resource is FHWA website. On their website, they have federal aid essentials for local public agencies. It's a catalog of over 115 videos that are about 5 to 7 minutes long on different phases of the project. That's very helpful if you have questions. We also have the local government project section website, my office website, on TxDOT.gov. And on this website, there's our training. I've gone over risk assessment, and that document on here, our standard specifications for local government on here, also our local government projects toolkit. And this is how our local government projects toolkit looks. It's made up of 3 documents. The manual, which is the why, which is really the laws and regulations of the program. Then we have the guide, which is the what, the procedures. Who's responsible for what? It breaks it down, what the LG is responsible for that phase of a project, and TxDOT's responsibility for that phase of a project. And then you have the workbook, and it's the how, the best practice. So they're all interchangeable. Each chapter represents the same chapter in each document. Real easy to use and click through. Another resource is our 8x11 local government responsibility for FHWA and TxDOT funded projects. I am pretty sure we can get this over to Bonnie to put on the website too. That's a good resource along with our project toolkit and then our training. And you can get our training, you can get to our training from TxDOT.gov. And then here's a map of Texas. My section is made up of 6 people. 5 of the 6 people are on here. 4 of us are local government coordinators, Tom, Amanda, myself, and Sonia. And then John Jameson is our section director, and he even has a district, which is El Paso. So our information is on the slide. If you have questions about, say, our training, or even after your project is selected and you have questions on how to move forward, our information is on the slide. So are there any questions?
Danielle, it's been a little quiet on the Q&A. We answered one question, and I don't believe we have any others right now.
Okay, well, I will pass you the ball then.
Perfect. All right, everyone, we are in it. This is our last presentation, and then we will have a period of question and answers for anyone who has some lengthy questions or anything else they want to discuss. But as Noah indicated before, this presentation is about the next stage. What is available on the website right now is the preliminary application, and you do not yet have access to the detailed application. We're still making refinements to it, but it will be a Excel-based form that you will submit to TxDOT via our Dropbox. Without further ado, this detailed application allows the project sponsor to respond directly to the different criteria evaluation categories. As Noah indicated, it's in the program guide, specifically Table 3. The 6 evaluation categories are safety, project readiness, geographic equity, connectivity and accessibility, community support and planning, and demand. So in the detailed application, there will be a number of different drop-downs, text boxes, fill in the blanks, mutually exclusive selection options. There's a number of different ways that you'll be able to fill in information. But what I want to focus on today is 6 different areas on ways to make your detailed application respond most closely to the project evaluation and selection criteria, and to give us the best picture of your project possible so that you can score the best. So to begin with, this is just a little example of what the detailed application will look like. Just to look at these 2 questions here, we're responding directly to safety. And you'll be prompted to tell us about the various safety hazards and how your project will provide countermeasures to those hazards. Additionally, we'll be asking about different infrastructure elements that may set your project apart from others. So to start with, I want to talk about design details. So we don't have as much knowledge about your project as you do. And in order to get a better picture, we desire a more comprehensive picture of your project. How your project meets the current standards of both federal and state standards, the constructability and durability of your project, information about the safety and accessibility and project readiness that your project will relate to. So how are you going to show us that information? Well, the following slides will go into more details, but in general, you'll have a project description. There'll be a number of drop-downs and fill-ins about project details. We will request specific project layout, typical section, and location map. And of course, your construction estimate. So to begin with the project description, this is your elevator pitch, but we would like it to be a very meaty elevator pitch, one that helps us to really understand what's going on with your project. We recommend 3 to 4 sentences. It needs to have some of the following information: facility type, project location, the limits, the width. Some people include the depth. Any major construction items that are important or elements that might affect vehicle traffic patterns. So the last note on the slide is that we expect that it would fit in the space provided. If it doesn't fit and you can't see it on your screen, then that means we can't see it either. So these are 2 examples of that project description. I will go ahead and read the second one. The proposed project would construct new 6-foot wide, 5-inch reinforced concrete ADA compliant sidewalks on both sides of Garner Street from Tunica Street to James Street, 1 mile, including replacing damaged non-compliant sidewalks on the north side of Garner Street between John Street and St. James Street, 0.3 miles of total project length. The project includes curb extensions at Tunica, John, and James Streets, and a raised median with pedestrian refuge at John Street. While that's a lot of words, it's concise, and we have a very thorough understanding of the project in just 2 or 3 short sentences. So that's the kind of description we're looking for. So some more information that you'll help describe the project design and details. These are some of the drop downs that you'll see: total length, facility width, material depth, and then project location. I have a few slides at the end of the presentation if folks need to go into more detail with this, but one of the ways that we are trying to make this application process more objective and more data-driven is by requesting a Google Map link. What that allows us to do is to download geo data about your project and then compare it. So we can look at your project in relation to certain census elements or other federally produced data sets that help us to understand all the projects in aggregate and make comparisons. So that Google Map link is important. So if there are any questions or any issues with how to make that work, please please let us know and we can give you some more help. But if anyone has already downloaded the project application instructions, the preliminary application instructions, then you have seen a short description of how to create a Google map by yourself and upload and make that shareable to us. Okay, so to continue, you'll be asked for latitude and longitude and a written description, meaning specifically stating from this street to that street, etc. Now, about project details. If you have any engineering plans already created, that does not mean you have to. As part of this detailed application process, we do not require it. But if you have design plans up to 30% or more already completed, then we request that you go ahead and attach those or upload them to some web source that we can download them ourselves. You will be asked to identify the primary facility type or secondary as well. Some projects have both, a sidewalk and a bicycle lane, or they have sidewalks and safety features at various intersections that are not concrete, related. What the surface type and material of your project is. Is there lighting included? If you do have a bridge, then there's a number of questions we'll ask about bridges just to better understand what you're proposing as part of your project. So when we talk about design, there's both state design resources that we would expect that your designs would be reflective of, and also federal. So here are 4 documents, and you can see here whenever this presentation is uploaded to the website, all these links are going to be available to you in case you can't find them. But the roadway design manual, the bridge design manual, the standard specifications for construction and maintenance of highways, streets, and bridges are all TxDOT documents that, as you can see here, these top 2 have been recently updated and contain a lot of good information. And lastly, the Texas MUTCD, which is the Texas version of the FHWA document that helps regulate the signal markings, the signals, the signs, and the pavement markings on the roadways. So some nationally recognized design guides that I think would be valuable to reference or to understand better. So to start with, we have these adopted by TxDOT, the 2012 version of the Guide of Development of Bicycle Facilities by AASHTO, the pedestrian version of that same document, and then also an AASHTO guide on the pedestrian bridges. It is worth noting that this document, the Guide for the Development of Bicycle Facilities, is on its way to being updated and is perhaps going to be finished in 2021. However, if your project is designed in accordance with this, and your detailed application, that would be acceptable. NACTO, 3 other design manuals on the right side here that are important and I think valuable for a lot of communities: the Urban Bikeway Design Guide, the Urban Street Design Guide, and their most recent one, Don't Give Up the Intersection. This gives a lot of good details about potential design solutions at conflict points like driveways and intersections and other junctions. So check those out if you'd like. And in the last 5 or 10 years, FHWA has been on a guide production streak. There's a number of bikeway design guidance manuals that have come out that talk about multimodal networks or focusing on the resurfacing of, or the incorporation of bicycle networks during resurfacing projects, how to leverage that construction to reduce the cost of incorporating bicycle infrastructure. There's also one here about specifically separated bike lanes, and that's really helpful. But the last two that I want to point out, I think would be most relevant to transportation alternatives projects that might be submitted under this call for projects. Specifically the small town and rural multimodal networks. Very good, very graphical design guide that discusses a number of different design considerations and opportunities, really, that are specific to rural towns and multimodal networks. And lastly, the most recently produced one is the Bikeway Selection Guide, which provides a policy-oriented approach towards bikeway selection, and focuses on some of the trade-offs and considerations when you're figuring out what best works for a specific project. So I think these are good elements here, or good design guidance. And regards to the pedestrian facilities, since I just talked about a number of different bikeway facilities, design guides, the United States Access Board's proposed accessibility guidelines for the pedestrian facilities in the public right-of-way, or the PROAG, is the latest and greatest and most appropriate design resource for pedestrian facilities. You can see here it focuses on those transportation purposes that are happening in the public right-of-way, specifically sidewalks, shared use paths, pedestrian crossings, and pedestrian signals. As part of the detailed application, we would expect project sponsors to provide a typical section. This can be attached as a PDF for the final submittal. But what this typical section allows us to do is demonstrate compliance with those standards. It really gives us an idea of how the project fits into the existing landscape or conditions or of the environment. You can see three examples here. One is very sketch oriented and doesn't necessarily involve a lot of graphics. You can see here you don't have to hire a fancy visual artist or landscape architecture firm to produce a typical section. If you have it and it works for your project to help explain the situation, that would be perfect. One of the things I like to point out with these slides is how they do show some the relation of things to other things, and they show the widths of things. So I think that's a really helpful way to understand. You can see here it shows that there's 6 feet from the edge of the sidewalk to the edge of the road. And I think that's a valuable understanding of how your project fits into the context. Like I said, you don't have to hire anyone. There's actually some free tools that are available online that are pretty powerful. I think our favorite is streetmix.net. It is a drag and drop typical section creator. You can literally look at a picture of a little bike lane and click it and drag it into a 30-foot right-of-way. And now you can figure out how you can fit the other elements within that same 30-foot right-of-way. How some things may need to be compromised in order to fit all the elements necessary for a safe corridor for all users. So those are some valuable, a valuable tool here at streetmix.net. So the next thing I want to talk about are maps. Maps are key to convey all that local knowledge to us here in Austin when we don't know about your community, we don't know about your projects that are proposed, or your local investment, or your local community. Your maps help us to understand that context and the needs and purpose of your project, the connectivity, accessibility, also safety countermeasures, and any communities or areas served. So in the following slides, I will show you a number of different map examples. And in the detailed application, it will specify which maps are required. I will give you a heads up that there are at least 2 that will be required, and that will be map 1, safety, and map 2, connectivity. One other one that we would expect to see is a project location map. This is pretty explanatory, how your project fits within your community. Where is it located? You can see here in this example some of these elements that are pretty strong into helping us understand your project. You can see here a blue line representing the proposed project and a green line that is a secondary part of the project. But it also shows bus stops, it shows public housing. A little lighter here, you can see there's community elements, a daycare facility, a city park, a visitor center, a library. So you can see how your project would directly connect to a number of different community amenities. Some of those amenities might include public buildings. They may include specific commercial or residential establishments, things like that. Another element is going to be the project layout. This is going to be identifying your project with, and you can see here with the specific elements included. So whereas the first map shows your general project in relation to community amenities, this is showing more of your design elements in that bird's eye view sort of look, where we can see that there's a crosswalk. We can see that that crosswalk is going to cross over the separated bike lane or cycle track here, and that is going to happen on Park Avenue. So we could see how all these elements interconnected and interrelated to each other. This gives us a good idea of the scale of the project. We understand the context and street names and things that are important when evaluating the project. I mentioned that another map is going to be map 1, safety. The things that you're going to include in your safety hazards or countermeasures map is going to be what are your identified safety hazards and how are you mitigating against them. So you can see here in this map, we are identifying the improvement, this blue line here, and its location, but also we're identifying a number of different hazards. So countermeasure 1 is a facility offset from the road. So I guess I misspoke. It's not necessarily identifying the hazards in this map. They had a second map that I didn't include on this slide, but this is identifying how their countermeasures are mitigating against those hazards. For this example, they're building a shared use path so that pedestrians and bicyclists don't have to be engaging with a high-speed, high-volume roadway. Here, they're constructing a pedestrian handrail. Here, the sidewalk separates pedestrians from motor vehicle traffic. So you could see a number of different ways in which this project would be helping the community. So some of those potential safety hazards, I want to make sure that we just listed them here. It would be high roadway speeds as defined as 45 miles an hour or greater, hazardous intersections or conflict points, uncontrolled intersections, crossings, lack of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, high motor vehicle traffic volume, on-street parking, wide roadway crossings, specifically 3 or more lanes, lack of lighting, and other. And if you check the box next to other, we would encourage specific stating of what your safety hazard in your community is that you're mitigating against with your project. Another element is a connectivity map. You can see here, this just shows us those specific community elements, the school, the public park, the health clinic, the bus stop, etc., that in relation to the proposed project. And this will be all very clear on which maps are required and which aren't in the detailed application. An example map that some folks include is if your project is building a section of long distance bicycle infrastructure, and you want to show how that relates to the tourism trails example network, then you'd include a map something like this. We included earlier in the chat a link to the statewide planning map, and you can find the example network there. You can also find it on TxDOT's GIS open portal. But if your project is building a portion of this very large network, then that is certainly worth noting and would improve your evaluation criteria. Just a simple note here that maps don't have to be complicated. You don't have to have a geospatial scientist on staff or a GIS expert. This map here is just an example how you can use Google Earth with labels placed in PowerPoint or in Word or other simple editing software to create a map. Really, the maps just show that relation of things. So there's a city hall and a local park, and here's some bus stops, and our project is mitigating a safety issue because people need to cross the street. So this map just shows an example of how it can be done with little expertise. The next element of the detailed application that I want to talk about are photographs. Photographs do an amazing job of helping us to understand the built-in natural environment around your project, the existing conditions, the need for your project, again, any safety hazards or accessibility issues that are present. So here's two examples here that showing how a project is within the historic district, and here it's showing the project in relation to a TxDOT roadway and a formal rail bridge. One important thing I want to point out here are the captions. If you're going to include photos to help support your project, help us to understand why they're supporting your project. We need the captions to tell us what we're looking at, what our vantage point is. Here it shows SH29 facing west, and here it shows on SH150 facing south. So these are critical to help support place this picture within the greater context. Again, we don't know this project as well as you do. Another thing photographs do are demonstrate existing conditions. You can see very poor conditions in photographs or locations within your project area that are deficient in some way. Either there's a lack of infrastructure, or perhaps there's a worn path, a goat path, a desire path that helps to identify that infrastructure is needed. So there's a gap. Here's some examples of photographs showing unsafe conditions. At the top here, some kids trying to, looks like, walk home from school, but there's no sidewalks, so they're just going right down the middle of the street. Similarly, here's a rather large roadway and some kids risking their lives to try and navigate that on their way home. Photographs can also show some mistakes that need to be resolved, right? This is some poor pedestrian facility design right there. And just to reiterate, if you make sure you label your photographs well, your photographs can be included all together. We encourage you to group them together on one Word document page or PowerPoint or Publisher, whatever it is, and just put your labels on that. We don't need separate photographs. That is one thing we would love to have during this call for projects is a smaller submission file from project sponsors, if at all possible. Compress photographs, reduce the file size, that would be great. These have to be sent around to a bunch of reviewers and makes it a little harder the larger the file size. The next element I want to talk about is project and public and stakeholder support. We need to know that your project has partnerships or coordination, if it's consistent with local planning, if your community is aware of it, or if they are interested in it. The idea here is to help us get a good grasp of your that this project wasn't just thought up yesterday. The projects that are well grounded in the community are more likely to succeed, and that's the goal here. how is it supported in the document? I will go through these bullets in the next few slides. So public involvement summary. This here just shows two ways that a project sponsor can show us a history of public meetings or public support of a project. You can see it's summarized in a table on the top here, very simply with date, event name, and outcome. You can see 12 citizens attended, all in support of the project. This is a great high-level summary for us. We don't need to have a copy of every sign-in sheet or things like that. This is just fine. Here again, these bullets do a similar job. They also show letters of support from various stakeholders around the community. As part of public support, one of the things we would anticipate is that if the project is part of any plans, that you would upload those plans as they are seen within in relation to the project. So in particular here, we have a Safe Routes to School plan, and there is a project begin, project end, and this is all that needs to be submitted, right? There's a map that's in the plan. They just highlighted it, literally just probably with a highlighter, and then they scanned and sent it in. Like this is the level of work we need. We do not want the entire Safe Routes to School plan. What we like is a focused effort to help us to understand the support in local plans. Here's another example of the same sort of thing. Within a regional plan, there's a table that shows recommended bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So if your project is listed within a TIP or an MPO plan, then this is a great opportunity to show that financially constrained plan. This is another example, but in a transit plan, again, we just saw the map. We just need a short identifying element here, and then perhaps just helping us link the two together. So these are great high-level ways to show us the inclusion into local documents. Earlier in the presentation, or today's workshop, there was a question about projects within the TxDOT right-of-way. This is an example letter from TxDOT that provides a consent for a project that's on or along a TxDOT road. As Noah indicated, we, for all those projects that are submitted and deemed eligible after the preliminary application, those project sponsors will have an opportunity to meet with district staff. Great opportunity to discuss the project, its location within the TxDOT right-of-way, and begin those coordination steps with your local district to get this letter in preparation for the detailed application. Another thing that's going to be required as part of this detailed application submittal is a project sponsor resolution from the governing board, whether that be your city council, police jury, whatever it is, to declare the support for your project, to commit to the development, construction, and maintenance of your project, to commit to provide any local match, and certainly to commit to entering into an AFA or an advanced funding agreement with TxDOT if you're selected for funding. It is worth noting this big sign at the bottom, plan ahead. You're probably well aware that your local governing board does not meet weekly. They'll probably meet monthly if that. So you need to be prepared to get on their agenda before it's too late. So plan ahead if you need to get this project resolution in time for your detailed application submittal. The next item is the proposed budget. And this is one of the more important parts of your detailed application. It conveys a project scope and scale. Helps us to identify potential overruns. It helps us to understand that you are actually going to be planning and scoping for all the elements you included elsewhere in your detailed application, and helps us to understand your level of readiness and your local support. You can see here, this is also part of the detailed application in the Excel, and you'll just be asked to fill in a specific blank with a quantity, unit, and unit price, and and then there'll automatically be some field formulas in there that'll help add up your budget and fill it into the various spots that it needs to be. As part of your detailed application, we would expect that you would use the average low bid unit prices. This link is active. You can also find it just by Googling, but this is a great compilation that TxDOT provides of district-specific and statewide prices for different construction tasks. So please check this out. These are great starting points to helping formulate your construction estimate. Some considerations for your budget. These are just some things that TxDOT PTN has picked up over the years in doing this call for projects. We like to pass on. You know, small quantities have higher unit costs. This is just talking about the scale of your project. If you're looking at those average low bid unit prices and they were all completed, their concrete costs for roadway projects, well, those are going to be using a lot more concrete, so the cost of that concrete may be a little less costly for those than it might be for your half-mile sidewalk project. So it's just important to understand the scale of your project and how that may change the cost. Inflation to year of construction. Your budget should reflect the year that you might actually be constructing this, not this year. So be sure to do that as part of your construction estimate. And it is worth noting that some folks will be seeking funding for either non-urban or small urban conditional projects list projects, which won't be funded for several years from now. So talk to your district staff about that. If you have any additional questions, call us or email us at PTN to help understand how that, what years you might anticipate inflating to. Next, quality construction. It's federal money. You heard Danielle's presentation. There's a number of hoops that you're going to have to go through in order to get this built. So we would hope that the construction would be of a good quality, and your design elements and your construction cost estimates should reflect that. Don't build cheaply, because it's certainly going to cost enough to administer the construction. Adequate dimensions, and this just makes sure that your dimensions in your cost estimate are reflective of those design guidelines that and books that I listed earlier. Some other elements to think about with your budget. There are a number of things that folks often do not include in their cost estimates that they could, like mobilization. That's an eligible expense. Site preparation, erosion control, lighting, all eligible expenses. Certainly curb and driveway work, and any traffic control or demolition, or in small quantities remediation of hazardous conditions. So be sure when you're doing your budget, you go ahead and include those elements. And this slide just talks about some things we've gotten a lot of questions about in the past about eligible versus ineligible activities. So for this year's call for projects, preliminary engineering is eligible for population areas under 50,000. So that can be an eligible expense. What is still not eligible is preliminary engineering if your population area is over 50,000. Additionally, incidental landscape environmental mitigation and utility adjustments are eligible. However, if those elements become major, then they are ineligible. What do we mean by major versus incidental? Well, if if the majority of your project is utility adjustments and you just happen to be building some sidewalks on top of that, then that's where FHWA is going to draw the line. These need to be bicycle and pedestrian improvement projects, not beautification projects that are just happen to include bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Some other things here, land survey for right-of-way demarcation is eligible, but purchasing right-of-way is not. Construction, engineering, and inspection are all ineligible expenses, and so is project administration. However, legal services and application preparation are not eligible activities. So this is an example of a cost estimate from a previous project sponsor. And you can see here one thing that was strong about their application is they specifically linked back to those safety countermeasures that they listed earlier in the application. These stars here are those safety countermeasures, and so it's very clear they are incorporating those, and they're budgeting for those items. I will say, please note that if your countermeasures are not included in the budget, then we will not consider them as part of your project. There have been project sponsors in the past who said that they were going to build, guardrails and curbs and all these other things, and then they didn't actually include those in their budget, and so that we scored them down for that because it did not appear that was going to be built. Project readiness. This is, I think, one of our last elements here, but as Noah mentioned earlier, and I think Danielle probably did too, is that these projects, it's not our rule, it's an FHWA rule, but the funding has to be used within 3 years. So that project readiness is important. So as part of your detailed application, we want you to be able to convey an awareness of the challenges and delays of your project, and that you have an understanding that of all the phases of project development, and that you understand the project development processes. Some ways that you as a project sponsor can demonstrate project readiness are in that project details section at the beginning. If you are in an MPO and you are know that you're going to be applying for TxDOT's TA program, then communicating with your MPO and coordinating with them is important. You can see here there's a thing called a tip inclusion letter that we would suggest as an attachment. Additionally, if any environmental work has already been done, we would love to see elements of that. If you've already done research and understanding, or perhaps you already own the property necessary for the project to be constructed, please attach information on that. We'll talk about railroad in a second, but railroad is can be a huge delay for projects. Well, let's continue. So, as I just mentioned, advanced coordination is necessary. So, railroad agreements. If you're within 50 feet of a railroad, that property might be owned by the railroad, and certainly you need to start coordination with them as soon as possible. I mentioned earlier the MPO tip. Additionally, resource agencies, coordination, environmental permits, right-of-way acquisitions, all of these things will take time, but again, we're just looking for an acknowledgement that how they fit within your project timeline and within your project itself. I won't read this, but the last part is the important part. Coordinate with your local TxDOT environmental coordinator early. They can help you understand processes for the categorical exclusion process of environmental documentation if you are not aware of it, and they can help you identify any pitfalls before it's too late. historical resources. This link here, I should make that a live link. That's another improvement we should make to this presentation. But the Texas Historical Commission's Atlas is a valuable first step to identify any potential historic resources within your project area. Their coordinators at Texas Historical Commission are valuable, and you can use your TxDOT environmental staff to help with that. But make sure you start that early. Okay. Phew. In summary, for project sponsors attempting to win award money for TxDOT's transportation alternatives, this detailed application is your avenue. It's your one way to get it done. So please provide good project details. I've talked about maps and diagrams and photos that can help tell the story. Your attachments can demonstrate good public awareness and support. Your budget is key in helping us to understand your project readiness and what your project actually will build. It's always important to plan ahead and coordinate early. And lastly, focus on that evaluation criteria. Look at those and how it's described in the program guide, and that will help you to guide your project. All right, well, how do we do? Do we have any questions?
Yes, we do have a couple of questions. One question I was hoping that John Jameson or Danielle could assist with the response on. The question is, if the city has a contract inspector, are those allowable reimbursable expenses? And would an on-staff inspector be a reimbursable expense?
Bonnie, I'll go ahead and answer that. This is John Jameson. Typically, those kinds of costs would be eligible for reimbursement, and that could be a consultant inspector, or it could be a local government employee who does the inspection. The one thing to keep in mind with the consultant inspector is we would need to make sure that they were procured according to federal and state requirements if the federal dollars are going to participate in that activity. So that's just something to keep in mind. But in general, those are eligible costs. Does that answer the question?
I believe so. Thank you.
You bet.
And then there's another question here about, it says, what do you mean by grouping is encouraged in relation to the MPO and MPO tip inclusion letter? And I did respond to that in the chat pod, but I wanted to expand on it a little bit because we only recently gained the ability to group TA projects in the TIP and STIP. Individually listing TA projects in the TIP and STIP is a time-consuming exercise that delays the initiation of projects. So by having this new ability to group the projects in the TIP and STIP, it should help us streamline the initiation phase of the project so that they can get an AFA sooner and start, procuring their consultant and start developing the project and getting it to construction sooner. It is an MPO decision whether or not the project would be grouped in their TIP, and if it is not grouped in their TIP. If it's individually listed, then it must be individually listed in the STIP. So it is a discussion that would need to be had with your MPO if you're in an MPO area. If you're outside of an MPO area, TxDOT intends to group the projects that are outside of MPOs and in rural TIPs and in the STIP. So I wanted to expand on that. We also had another question come in. If a project is on a city roadway with a prescribed maintenance right-of-way, but not a standard right-of-way, can these projects be constructed under this funding? Carl, can you unmute Benjamin Miller, because I am not sure what is meant by a prescribed maintenance right-of-way, but not a standard right-of-way.
Sure, Ben, you're unmuted.
Ben, you might have to unmute your own device before you can speak or accept the request to unmute.
He said he's not available on the phone. I think he's...
Oh, okay.
Yep, sorry.
All right, well, instead of trying to guess, I'm going to ask you to email me afterwards and or give me a call, and we will discuss this situation. It seems that it may be a kind of a particular site-specific circumstance, so we can discuss that offline. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions? Feel free to click the little hand icon and raise your hand, and we can unmute you, and you can ask your question verbally, or you can type it into the Q&A pod. Well, I want to thank everyone for spending your time today to learn about our new call for projects. We're excited to be kicking off the 2021 call for projects under unique circumstances. And we did miss traveling around the state and visiting each of you in your communities. But we encourage you all to apply for TA funds. Feel free to follow up with other questions, and we will stay on the line for a few minutes in case you think of something now. But we will compile all of the questions that we received during the 3 workshops into a frequently asked questions document, and it will be posted on our funding webpage. Thank you. We have another question. When will the preliminary applications be made available? The preliminary applications are available on our webpage now. They were posted on the 15th, so they are available for download immediately. And the deadline for preliminary applications is March 1st. Detailed applications would be available in mid-April, but if you want a preview of what that might look at, you're welcome to take a look at past detailed applications. The 2019 TA call for projects detailed application will be very similar to the one that we have for this year.
Well, I noticed we have 22 attendees left. We've waited a few minutes. We are going to go ahead and call it quits unless anyone else has anything left to say. Oh, and the numbers are dropping. Okay, well, with that, I will go ahead and stop the recording. Everyone have a great day. Bye.